Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Again, we are just leaving ASHP this last week, and it's the first weekend where you kind of realize that your competition is fierce and there are many of them. And I think it doesn't really come home until you go into that residency showcase and you start talking to people. And I honestly think sometimes it makes it a little bit worse where you're getting answers, but you're not getting recognition. And so you go in and you talk to a bunch of people, and now maybe you got a feel for who's actually who. Maybe you're putting a face to a name from a past time where you were, in on one of their local meetings and so on. But the big thing that you have to worry about now is, how am I going to stand out? And there's a couple of ways to do this. And the big thing is that you don't want to try to stand out based on being the best academically and try to out academic other people. What you want to do is outmatch them. So when you're thinking about something like dating, you think about like, oh, I would like to be with a person that's this, and that, right? And then they're thinking about the same thing. But what you want to do is start thinking about the match and start thinking about, all right, all these appies that I've taken, especially the ones that you've taken before December, what which of the ones that I'm looking at do I really match up well to? So maybe you had ambulatory care and cardiology, and maybe you had a critical care, and those are three required rotations at a site. Well, you would probably match pretty well to them. However, if you find that their required rotations and what you've taken don't really match up, or maybe you got a little bit unlucky and those rotations are in March and April and so on, you really have to do some explaining as to how you're going to match. Because what's going to happen is that they're going to ask you questions in the interview as if you had those appies. And someone who's had those appies is going to have answers off the top of their head. It's going to be very flowing. It's going to be very good. On the other hand, if you have not had those, then I would recommend that you go and look at the resource I have, which points you to all of TLDR Pharmacy's um, answers, basically to kind of the top 15 disease states that they're going to ask you questions about. So at residency.teachable.com, I put a document that can help you figure out, okay, for CHF, what would I do? For a diabetic patient, what would I do? And so on. And so what you have the little bit more difficult challenge of is, if your rotations are after December, then you actually have to show competence in something that you haven't even had an appy in. And it can be done. Don't get me wrong. Some people do get unlucky that way. But what we really need to do now you need to be really honest about matching. And what many of you have done is probably sent a thank you or something like that. But what you really want to do instead is continue the conversation. That is, I appreciated meeting you, and I saw your poster was about this, so I'm emailing you directly, giving them a reason why you're emailing that person versus another resident versus the RPD. And I had questions about this. And so the again, the toughest thing to do is to be remembered in a good way, rather than being forgotten, because many of the times what happens is that they have maybe 20 applications that they're responsible for, and maybe they remember one or two or three because of something that stands out. But they're also going to remember the people that are continuously in email contact. And this contact, it can't be superficial. It has to be really like, oh, it really makes sense for you to come here. And it's almost like they're saying, they are almost recruiting you to come there, which they can do. And it's not unheard of. So again, I think that as you're kind of applying to these places, I would start with the places that are more local, or at least you have a connection to. That is, you've done an appy. Then I would go to those ones that maybe are in state. Again, 50% generally of any college's matches are in the state. And then I would go to those ones that are out of state, where you might match to them in terms of the residency, required in the electives and all that, but it may take a little bit more work to explain to them why it is that someone from, Alabama is going to New York, or why someone from New York is going to Alabama. I'm not trying to, I know it's a movie, right? Sweet Home Alabama. But there needs to be an explanation as to, what it is that makes you want to do that. And the other thing is that it actually makes you unique. So in some ways, you want to fit in and you want to match. And I've even told some people that, it may, if you record your letter of intent, as an MP3, it actually makes it a little bit easier. They can just kind of listen to you. And if you are in the Deep South, I went to school in Gainesville for undergrad and then went back to Maryland. That's my actual pharmacy school alma mater. But if you're from, the Eastern Shore of Maryland, I will know your accent. If you're from Baltimore, if you're from Gainesville, if you're from the Panhandle in Florida, um, uh, Arizona even had some bit of accent with pluralizing some words that are not normally plural, like for reals, for sures, and maybe they don't use that anymore. But there is a distinct dialect, there is a distinct recognition that you are one of us, and that's what you want to see. So again, my goal is for you to get a residency and the residency that you want, and it's really all about matching. And so as you're looking at this weekend and you're overwhelmed by all the people that were applying, well, I can tell you most of them are going to say, hey, look, I was president of this, look at my GPA, look at my CV, all of that stuff. Instead, what you want to do is, I really talked to Dr. Smith about her research in this, and I really felt that's really along the lines of what I'm trying to do. And then I have my own research in this, and I've done an appy here, and then I've done an appy there, and it just flows and just seems to fit. So there's a reason why 90% of students who get an interview get their top 3 choices. It's because those people that got an interview, the committee, it was just so clear this person fits so well to them. And then those that didn't get it, it's pretty clear that they don't. So don't be discouraged by the number of people you saw. Don't be overwhelmed. Again, I think the letter of intent is really a self-reflection and a way for you to really articulate what it is that you really want. And you are going to get your sixth sense going, where you're going to start writing to a place and you're like, I really don't want to go there. That really doesn't fit. I'm just trying to fit this square peg into a circle. And other places you're like, wow, I didn't really consider them, but now that I look at it, that actually is a much better fit. And I think that if you are honest with yourself, you're going to end up in a place that you're really happy with as you go. So again, if you need my help, residency.teachable.com, or you just got a question or two, tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. I just really enjoy taking this journey with you guys, and I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to go out to Anaheim, but I will be there in Orlando in March, which most of you guys don't go to, but that's fine. But anyway, wish you the best. And again, focus on the match. Don't focus on trying to impress anybody. The more you match, the more the conversation keeps going, the more you're remembered, the more you end up in the interview. And if you're in the interview, it is fair game. Everybody that's in the interview has an equal chance. Grades are over. All that stuff is done. So that's where you need to go next. Get the interview. That's the next step.